All right, you're gonna, open a new file, and to do that, let me get back to the home screen here. All right, so you're on the start screen just like this one, and you're gonna start a new file called Architectural Template. Okay, it's under the Projects section. Architectural Template. Click on that, and I'll give y'all a moment to get caught up here. Okay, the first thing we want to do is, before we start building our floor plans, we got to have some walls. If you go to the Architecture tab up top, yours may already be selected, but just click on the Architecture tab and you should get an array of panels. We're looking for the Build panel, and we're actually looking for walls. And if you click on the little pull down menu under walls, you'll see you have different types of walls. The only one that we're concerned about at the moment is architectural. Okay, so anytime you see this little curved looking wall up here, that means you're in architectural. And if you'll go ahead and click until you get a basic wall generic 8-inch in your properties panel right here, okay, the one that's blinking on and off. Go ahead and do that. Everybody got that? Okay, now I need you to go back to listening and watching. What I'm going to do with this wall, or actually I'm not going to do anything with this particular wall. I am, however, going to look for a similar wall to what I want to design. There's walls. If I click on this little pull down arrow right here, just watch, don't do it. If I click on that pull down arrow, I have a series of walls here, a whole list of walls that I could use to kind of use as a template to design the wall system that I want. The closest thing to what I want is going to be this exterior brick on metal stud. And so I go ahead and I select that to make that my template. So everybody go ahead and select that particular template to where it is in that current basic, or that current wall thing right here that's blinking on and off. Yeah. All right, now I want to edit this particular wall right here to make it match my specification. Right below there is a button that says Edit Type. That is to edit the type of wall. I'm going to click on Edit Type, and I'm going to get a Type Properties dialog box. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to use this as a template. So if I'm mousing over here to the side, there's some buttons that I can push. One is called Duplicate, and that's the one I want to push so that I can duplicate this particular wall and then make my own wall based on this template. Now my wall is going to be a brick wall, so I'm just going to delete the metal stud part and call it timber stud, because that's what I'm going to use for my studs. All right, you may, if you're working on yours, you may have a different type of siding. You might have brick veneers. You'd probably want to change the name to brick veneer on timber stud. You might have vinyl sidings. You'll change it to vinyl on metal stud. Vinyl on timber stud, or something of that nature. And then go ahead and click OK. And you see here in the type line, the name changed to indicate that I am currently working in that new feature, or that new item that I've created. Okay, so go ahead and do that. Okay, my next step is to actually start editing the structure of this wall. And I'm going to go into the value column right here, and I'm going to click on Edit. And it's going to give me all of the materials that were originally used to put together this wall. And I'm going to change some of those. Okay. The first thing I'm going to change is the core boundary layer. Now you see where it says core boundary twice. That's really basically just a boundary between your frame and the material that's on the outside of the wall and the material that's on the inside of the wall. So if I'm in the middle of core boundary, that is where all my 2x4s and things like that are. If I'm on the bottom side of that core boundary, you see right here it says interior side, then I'm on the interior side of the house, putting things on like sheetrock and stuff of that nature. On the exterior side, that means I'm on the outside, putting on bricks and sheathing and what have you. Okay, so go ahead and click. All right, the next step, the first thing that I see that I want to change is right here in the top right. It says sample height. I'm going to change that to 10 because I want 10-foot ceilings. And I'm not sure, I might have to change it again somewhere else, but for now we'll just keep that at 10 foot. And then the next thing I'll do is go down here to structure where it says metal stud layer. I don't want metal studs. I want to change these to softwood lumber studs. So I scroll down and I find softwood lumber and I select softwood lumber. Okay, so because I'm recording. Okay, now that we have softwood lumber selected, you should still be on this screen right here. We want to actually create a new lumber that's going to match the lumber that we're going to purchase to build this house. Now all the things that are already in Revit, these are just kind of the generic items. This is where BIM, or Building Information Modeling, comes into play. And this is where we want to indicate all of that information I had you guys go and look up on the internet. So softwood lumber is highlighted right now, and I'll go down to the bottom of the page and there's a little ball with a plus sign. Next to that little ball with a plus sign is a drop down menu. Okay, and you see it's already dropped down, and it said, or no, that's just the instruction that says create and duplicate some material. But I'll click on that, and I want to click on duplicate selected material because there's a lot of information in that material that I want to keep. So I click on that, and you see here I have softwood lumber with a 1 in parentheses, meaning that that basically is different from the above lumber. You can rename that if you want to. Okay, and I'm going to show you how in just a second. But I'm going to click on the Identity tab, all right, and I'm going to pause here. All right, and here's where I can change some information. I'm actually going to change the name of my lumber. I'm going to change it to the actual brand that I'm going to use. And there's actually going to be 2 places that you can put this. You don't have to name it after the brand that you're going to use. A lot of the stuff that you do in here is going to be for your reference, and or if you work for a company, they might tell you specifically what they want you to put in there. Okay, but I'm just going to put top choice lumber because that is the lumber that I'm going to use. Down below that, there's just the scientific description. I'm not going to try and pronounce that. The first one is pinus. The second one is inchinata, I believe, and that is just a scientific name for pine lumber, or the Latin, actually. The class, leave it the same. It is wood. Comments is where you'll put any comments about the material that you think need to be placed inside of this box. I can't think of any offhand, but in the future you might have some things that you want to put in there so that you don't forget. Next is product information, and here is manufacturer. Okay, and I'll type in manufacturer, again, as top choice. I have to spell it right first. And then I'm going to go down to the model number and put the model number of my lumber in. And to do that, I'll have to kind of refer back to my web page that I have my lumber on. And I just found this lumber at Lowe's, and I've already, because that's what I searched for last time, so 2x4 is already in the search bar. Click search, and there are my 2x4s. Boy, it's running slow today. I'm going to click on the 2x4s right here that I'm choosing. Try it again there. And here's where I get the model number from. It's right here. Model number, and then here's the manufacturer's model number. I click, or I Control C on that to copy it. And then I go back to my model, Control V, and post that in there. Cost was $4.78, and the pricing was for each. That is the unit. Now, in reality, if you were building a house, you would contact a salesman, and they would give you a quote on, say, a pallet load or per pallet, and you would actually put that in here, whatever the price is per pallet. Okay, and URL is also very useful. You can put the URL in there for where you selected your lumber from. It's not crucially important, but just one of those little added features that you could use. And just click Control C, minimize URL V, and there's the basically all the information that you would need to find that lumber again. The box below this, it says Revit annotation information. This information will show up on your drawing. So whatever information you might need to put on here for any particular materials, you're not going to need that for the lumber. But any particular materials, you might have some extra notes that you'd want to put so that they can see that when they're reading the drawing. Now that's pretty much it, is what you would do as far as changing stuff here. Now I'm going to show you some of the other things that are really beyond the scope of this course. Now, of course, graphics and appearance, you can change those if you want to. They're, if you use a good template, then they're already going to be set where you need them to be set anyway. But the ones that are beyond the physical or beyond the scope of this course are the physical and the thermal. This is all the scientific information regarding the material that you're going to use. And this pretty much would be something you would definitely cover this in college, especially if you're going to be an architectural engineer. This is the type of stuff that you would know. You would know all these parameters, or how to find all these parameters of the material that you're using. Now, with 2x4 lumber, it's pretty much generic, I guess. You would get the information, like if I was going to use Top Choice lumber, I would probably get with some people at Top Choice and try and get this information, which I'm sure they've already tested their lumber and figured out all the different possibilities and specifications and things like that. Another one is thermal. Thermal is basically the transfer of heat, and it also has thermal values. And again, that is beyond the scope of this course, something you'll definitely learn about when you're in college. So we've got that. We've already changed our identity for that particular piece of material. So now we can actually click OK, and we see our Top Choice lumber is right here. And the last thing we'll do is change the size. How wide is a 2x4? Someone tell me. One dimension is 1.5, but the dimension we're concerned with is what? 3.5. Okay, so it's 1.5 by 3.5. The 3.5 dimension is what's going to affect the thickness of this wall. So I'm going to type in here 3 space 1/2, and it's already got the inch mark quotation thing there, and I'm going to chain in enter. Now that's going to set the thickness, or start to set the thickness of my wall. Okay, now I'm going to pause here. All right, and you would do the same for all these other materials that are on here. Now I'm going to briefly go over some of these materials and what they are and what these different columns mean. Starting with first row under the function column, you see we have a material, it says finish 1, and then in parentheses 4. All right, if I click on the little arrow next to that, I have several things that I can select between. What the number in parentheses indicates is its level of priority. It will take precedence in the geometry. It'll take precedence over materials with higher numbers. So the lower the number, actually the higher the priority. It's like number 1 priority for structure. So when you're modeling in the software, anything with a priority of 1 will adjust according to the other priority levels of material that come in contact with it. That's really the best way I can put that, but we'll see how that works as we go along. Now here it says finish number 1. This is the exterior of the house. So brick common is the material that I'm going to use. Okay, so that's going to be the exterior finish. There's another finish in here. When you pull down the menu, it says finish number 2 with a priority level of number 5. So it's got the least priority. That one would be your interior finish, typically drywall and or some sort of beaded board or anything like that. So still on row 1 here, we got finish 1 and brick common, and the size that if your brick or whatever exterior siding that you're using changes, then you would need to change this thickness as well. The same thing on brick common. If you have bricks or veneer or some kind of siding, you need to go in here and change that material. You may have to create a new material. All right. Over here in the wraps column, and that one's hard to explain too, but we'll see how it works as we go along. But wraps are how the wall feature wraps around other features, like how it wraps around inserts like windows and doors, how it all trims up and how it all cleans up and stuff like that. So with the finish 1, we definitely want to leave that checked. You see the last column is structural material. The only thing here that is structural material is the lumber that's inside the wall. All right. Now, of course, you know with bricks we have a thermal air layer. This one says 3 inches. I'm not going to go that much. I'm going to go with 1 inch. So I'll change the thickness of that, and that's not going to wrap. Okay, so that's not going to trim up. And again, you'll kind of see that working as we go. Another one here, number 3, membrane layer. We're going to delete that layer because we don't need that air infiltration barrier on our house. So we're going to delete it. The next one is plywood sheathing. Okay, here you'd want to go in and change any parameters that are necessary, such as, changing your plywood sheathing. There's lots of different plywood sheeting out there, so you'd need to go in here and edit it. Again, duplicating the material and putting the necessary information regarding the material that you have. And of course the size. 3/4 most common. You might have 1/2 inch or 5/8. So you would need to change that thickness here. And this one does not wrap. So we'll turn the check mark off on that one. Going further down, going past the structural level, or the structural layer that we were on, there's actually on the other side of the core boundary, there's a membrane layer. This is the vapor retarder. It's not always necessary on a residential structure to have that membrane layer right there. The reason they put it there is because they had that other type of membrane material that I deleted on the outside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this membrane layer, and I'm going to highlight it and then click on the up button to move it up to the above the substrate. Okay, substrate being that plywood sheathing. So I should have a finish, which is my brick, a thermal air layer, which is that gap between my brick and the building, membrane layer, which is vapor retarder. Its size is 0. It's the only thing that you can put on here is 0 size. It's just paper. It's not going to change the thickness of your wall. Then, of course, the substrate at 3/4 of an inch or whatever size your plywood sheathing is. Again, the structure, which is inside the core boundary. And then outside the core boundary on the inside of the house, you got finish number 2 with a priority level of 5. It's not as important as finish number 1. Okay, so that's why we use this one on the interior. It says gypsum wallboard, and you would also need to go in here and edit some information such as manufacturer and things like that. And of course your architectural engineer would go in and edit some of the more complicated factors such as your thermals and your physical properties. Now this gypsum wall board typically for the inside of the house is about 1/2 inch. Okay, so it's okay at 1/2 inch. It can stay there. We turn the wrap on that one off for now. We might change it later, and it really depends on how everything behaves. And of course, we might just change it on just certain places and not the whole wall in general. All right. So now I'm going to pause here, and you're going to go in and you're going to make all those necessary changes to your material, and I'm going to come around and help you out. Now that's how you design your wall system. Okay, we got all our materials, we got our exterior finish, and I forgot to delete my thermal air layer. Okay, so we got our exterior finish. We've indicated the wraps. We've got our sheathing. We've got our lumber. We got all of our thicknesses down. Everything's good to go. And our wraps down here in the default wrapping box, we just want to select both and then exterior, and then we're good to go. So now we have walls, sort of. Now all we got to do is make the walls.